Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to homophones. What's a homophone, you might be asking? Well, it's when you have two or more words that are spelled differently but pronounced the same. The following are all homophones. There, and there, though not necessarily in that order. There was there as in the possessive, there as in the contraction, and there as in there it is. And you know, somebody should do an extra video on how to use these because it seems like we've all forgotten. But when it comes to homophones, these United States are in a league of their own, which ironically is an American movie. It's not just the have and the have-nots, it's the have and the have-nots. That's an example, not for me, because I say have and have differently, but sometimes Americans will say them the same. That was a bonus entry. It's not going to be in the main list today. And that list is basically 5 homophones that you find in the United States of America that you don't find in my home country of England. So now that you've caught on, let's get underway with our first entry on the list. Back in 2003, people way smarter than me at Harvard University did a study into dialects around the United States. What they found was that this deeply controversial issue split America into two halves. Most of the people in the East pronounce both words differently. And if you heard my pronunciation of both words at the very start of this section, you'll notice that I'm in that camp too. I'm very, very red. And that's not just sunburn. However, once you get west of the Mississippi, everything changes, and not just the landscape. People out west overwhelmingly pronounce the words cot and court the same, right? And this is known as the cot-court merger. That's a linguistic term that means that the two sounds became one. And even though this phenomenon is most synonymous with the United States, it can be found elsewhere. Take, for example, Scotland and Ireland. I caught a cot as it dropped from an airplane, a Scotsman might not say. And so, you know, it's not just unique to America, but I certainly never heard this in England. Now, when I said that it was split half and half west to east, that wasn't a perfect science. I mean, you know, look at New England, for example. England might not have the cot-court merger, but New England does. And I want to highlight Pennsylvania too, because it can't make its mind up. It's sort of a microcosm for the wider United States. You've got the sort of, you know, east portion of it pronouncing the two words differently, and then the west portion has the cot-court merger. Pennsylvania, as we will see later on, it can't agree on its homophones, right? Some people do one thing, others do another. So stay tuned until the end of the video for another crazier example. In all, the study found that about 3/5 of Americans pronounce the two words differently, which means about 2/5 of Americans are saying cot and court exactly the same way. Let me know in the comments below which ones you fall under, and yes, we're just getting underway. Now, there are some words on this list that the Harvard study didn't include, so I had to do those myself using the scientific method of putting a poll out on YouTube. And this was one of those cases because, you know, having lived in America for 12 years, you come to hear specific sounds again and again and again. And one of those that stood out to me is occasionally, very occasionally, I've heard people pronounce the words poll, pull, and pole all the same way. And I was intrigued to find out how widespread this was, right? So I put the poll out and the results came back like this. 89% said that poll and pole were pronounced the same, but that pull was different. 5% said that all three were pronounced differently, whereas 6% said that all three are pronounced the same. Now, what I don't have here, just because YouTube polling is a rubbish method for collecting this kind of data, I don't have where people are situated, so I don't know if this is a regional thing or what. So if you are one of those 6% who went with all three are pronounced the same, let me know in the comments below where you are, right? And what dialect you utilize, because there could be something in this. And I think, you know, if I get back some interesting results on this, I might create a survey of my own, not using YouTube polling, you know, but create a huge poll that puts into it, you know, different demographics that can work this kind of thing out. And how did we not recognize the irony that I put out a poll asking people how they pronounce poll? That should have been worked in as a joke. If we could work that in next time, that'd be great. I know there's not going to be a next time. I'm just giving you constructive feedback. Right, thanks, Mum. Again, that was a joke. My mum is not my scriptwriter. She is back home in England watching this video, presumably pronouncing pull, poll, and poll differently. So, right off the bat, I'd have to admit that this one does have a partial presence in England. I mean, I've said I've been to the shops, just as I've said I've put rubbish in the bin, right? But one pronunciation of the word bean that I'd never heard until I moved to the United States was Ben. And that, of course, the name Ben can be homophonic. Is that a word? Is it? Look it up after this. With the word bean. And it seems like Americans, chiefly in the north of the United States, pronounce it that way. In other words, I've been to the shops, right? That wasn't an American accent, so it sounded weird. I've been to the shops. That's really bad. That's the worst impression of somebody from Minnesota I've ever done. But it is a trait of those northern states, and I think it seems to be influenced by Canadian English because they tend to do that there as well. And this isn't a small amount of people. I mean, that same study done by Harvard found that nearly 30% of Americans say bean as Ben. Can you imagine Uncle Ben's garbanzo Ben's mix? That would be a mouthful, literally, because you'd eat it. Just don't eat your words. This metaphor could go on forever. So could this video. Let's go on to the next entry. So let me make up a scenario in which all three of these words might be used, right? So let's say I went to the library and I took out a book on vapour that had accumulated on the grass outside. Vapour might be the wrong word again. Look that up. We should have done it beforehand. And I call up the library because I notice I'm past my date, right? And I say, hey, I've noticed that this riveting book on garden dew is past its due date. Should I bring it back? And they'd respond with, please do. That's how it would be where I come from. But with a lot of Americans, and again, I had to do my polling on this because Harvard, frankly, didn't have the foresight. In America, and this is according to my Nobel Prize winning poll, 81% said that they say all three of these words exactly the same way. So instead, they would ask, when is this book about do, which I've just realized sounds like do, which is another word for poo. So it's a book about poo in America, and they just need to know when that is to be returned. Do and poo both rhyme. Sorry, this is going in a direction I didn't expect. But intriguingly, 8% of respondents said that the words do, as in I can do that, and the word due, as in this is when it's due, are pronounced the same, but the word dew, as in Mountain Dew, is pronounced differently from the other two. So I want to know again, in the comments below, let me know if you do that and where you're from, specifically what your dialect is. And if it turns out there's something interesting in that, I might do a massive do survey. We'll have to work on the title. And I really hope it turns out that there's some sort of phenomenon with this in the state of Pennsylvania, because there certainly is with our final entry. This month I was going to film a wedding ceremony between my cat and another cat, just so that I could have a video that would reach 1 million views. And unfortunately, not only has that wedding have to be cancelled because of the pandemic, but the search for a 1 million viewed video goes on. And I was going to use that video as an example of how the Mary, Mary, Marry merger works. I forgot to add the other cat was called Mary. So I had to reach back into the archives from before we were all quarantined to find an alternative example. And I found this beautiful, beautiful picture of this chap called Abraham marrying this woman, Mary. And if you look, they both look merry while they're getting married. So here we go. In America, right, there are certain places within the US where all three words are pronounced exactly the same way. This is known as the Mary, Mary, Marry merger, or I mean, you could switch the words whichever way you want. And according to that same 2003 Harvard study, 57% of Americans do that very thing. It's widespread and it's regionally dictated. The red on this map indicates places where people pronounce Mary, Mary and Marry all the same. So that's most of America, and you'll see that there's different shading of red. That indicates that there are going to be exceptions here and there, but things are a little bit different up in the Northeast. In the likes of Boston, Rhode Island, New Jersey and Manhattan, all three words are usually pronounced differently. And that green that you see in New Jersey, as you know, green things tend to do, trickled over into the state next to it. And that state was one that we mentioned earlier. It's Pennsylvania. In fact, to be precise, it's Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, the words Mary, Marry and Marry all sound different, which is in sharp contrast to the western portion of the state where people generally pronounce it the same way they do in the rest of America. In other words, each word is pronounced the same way. But then, jam-packed in between the green and the red, let's say an avocado and a tomato, is a fried egg. So on this matter, Pennsylvania is sort of like a fried egg sub, or should that be hoagie? It's just dawned on me. I feel really sorry for all of the Marys of Pennsylvania. I mean, imagine the wide confusion. Is that you? Let me know in the comments below. In fact, better yet, share this video with any Mary that you know that lives in Pennsylvania. We need their feedback. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below how you pronounce all of these words and where you're located. I don't want specific addresses. Again, that was weird. Over the last few weeks, I've been teasing some of the information you saw in this video on Twitter. And if you would like to get ahead of the game and get a sneak peek on what might be coming up in some of these videos, you can follow me at Lost in the Pond US. But a better way to make sure that you get my latest video and to make sure they don't get lost in the pond is by subscribing to my channel by hitting my stupid little face and clicking my bell. And I want to finish this video today, as I always do, by giving a humongous shout out to all of my patrons who make these videos possible. I think the support that you give allows me to put in the hours of research that's often required of some of these videos, and I can't thank you enough. And so if you or anybody you know would like to support Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. It only takes 5 minutes to sign up, and if you do so before 8 p.m. Central Time tonight, you'll get to join my secret live stream. It's so secretive I have to whisper it. That's it. Be merry, be married, and be Mary. No one's all of those three things. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.